Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the latest episode of Bourbon Banter podcast with me, Mr. Bourbon. Thanks for everyone that checked out last episodes. As I said, we're going to keep it consistent. But today, we've got two guests that have been on previously. Very friend of the show. Do you want to introduce yourself?
After you.
Actually, I went after you last time, and then you left me like, oh yeah, my name's Joe. Well, yeah, my name's Joe, fat white guy. It's nice to be on and talk about something a bit more serious, because like before it was like you guys were about R. Kelly and cancel culture, and it's like Game of Thrones. Yeah, let's get Joe on. So, yeah, it's good to be back though. Thanks for having me, man.
No, man, anytime.
Yeah, Chris, man of the people, ever evolving, bro. Right? That's
Man of the people.
That's how we're moving over here, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear that, man. Well, first of all, thoughts and prayers to all the people and of Ukraine at the moment. It's peak at the moment, man. It's all on top at the moment, man. So just hope that everything can just calm. And also as well, man, like thoughts and prayers to the people, the people that are fighting, the soldiers that are having to fight for Russia, who are not even agreeing with what's happening at the moment, because there's a lot of people that aren't feeling it, man. And they're being, obviously, dictatorship is putting them in a corner to actually have to do what they're doing. So thoughts and prayers to everybody involved, and hopefully it can get resolved with minor casualties, man, or no casualties at all, if possible. But, you know, man, so it go, man. But, yeah, man. So today, like, I want to kind of touch on a subject which I guess it's always been around, but it's kind of recently, it's really kind of come to form now, and it's really, and it's cancel culture and freedom of speech. As of late, there's been a lot going on with various people, various celebrities that have kind of said certain things and have been shunned by the public, or some have, some haven't as much. And I think it's kind of brought up a conversation about freedom of speech and consequences of that, and what the impacts are, and if there are any impacts, if some impact others more than others, if that makes sense. So, I mean, the one that comes to mind at the moment, which was a big one, was the Joe Rogan thing, where it kind of, is for those that don't know, Joe Rogan, he runs like it's probably, I'd probably say arguably the biggest podcast in the world.
It's the biggest podcast.
It's not even arguable, mate. It's by a way as well, by some distance.
I saw the numbers.
His numbers are wild, man. Yeah. It's absolutely wild. But it's funny because, like, basically he's been in a lot of hot water recently because some stuff has kind of resurfaced on some old episodes and old conversations that have been had on. Was some of them all on the podcast, or was some of them like?
No, all the ones that have been brought up, all the ones that have been montaged and packaged and stuff. They're all from his podcast, but a lot of them are from the old days when it was a bit more guerrilla style, before podcasts became like the slick operation that they are now. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's a couple of videos floating. There's what there's one basically, right. There's a N-word compilation where he's which is wild. And then there's another video where he's basically talking about going into a black neighborhood to watch Planet of the Apes, and he said we really were in Planet of the Apes. There was no white people around, and I was just like, wow, that's wild. He's a wild boy. But the thing is, it's one of the things where, for me, I was kind of shocked, but I wasn't, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, I didn't kind of take that much notice to the Joe Rogan podcast. I watched it when there were people that I wanted to see on there. Say like if Chris Rock was on it, or like Dave Chappelle was on it, or something like that. I'd watch catch them ones, Even actually, I watched one with The Undertaker as well, which was quite as well, decent. But the thing is, I never really kind of took notice. So, and I think a lot of this stuff has happened over the years, and I think a lot of it kind of either went on the radar or certain people didn't hear it, so there was no sort of backlash about it. But I mean, what do you guys think about it when you because it kind of literally came out of nowhere, and it kind of was like a big thing on the timeline for like a good few weeks.
For me, with what's been going on with this pod, like it's been bubbling, because this is not the first instance where he's had people on like to speak or whatnot, or he's had like been delivering a particular message, and people have there's been backlash off the back of it. So it's as you'd expect, it's getting to a point where okay, cool, we need to get you out of here. What don't I like about what you've done in the past? So this has kind of brought us to where we are at the minute. To be honest, I'm not really surprised about the stuff that I've seen either. It's just like time and time again, Chris Rock told me like that train is never late. It's always there, and it's
never late.
It's never late, bro. Like you'd like to think that someone in that type of position, like someone in that type of position, like if that is the case of what it's been held with. Also, something that kind of bothered me about that is the fact that stuff was out there, but it didn't come to the surface until this happened. So it's a case of, okay, so is that because it's not in my echo chamber? If it's not in my echo chamber, why wasn't it in the echo chamber of those who were flinging out the big money or whatnot to give this person a voice on a platform that can influence the masses that he does?
I've got a theory on that, which I'll get to as to why that is the case, because the same for me as well. What are you saying?
So, I mean, there's two sides of it, really, and I can address one side of it with confidence, and the other side of it is difficult. The first side of it is with the misinformation and the anti-vax stuff, is that he has people on that talk about everything, because he actually leans one way politically, but that's not how he hosts his podcast. He has everyone that talks about everything. So people always focus on the conservative side of it, the anti-vax side of it, and obviously people are using that to say he spreads misinformation, which I don't think is necessarily true. He just looks at both sides of the coin, and obviously that nowadays we live in a world of extremes where you're either one way or the other. You can't just be a little bit in the middle and try and listen to everybody, which is I've always applauded Joe Rogan for doing. I'm probably a bigger fan than you two are. Like, I'm a big fan of the UFC. His commentary is second to none. He's probably the best sports commentator around.
Cool.
His comedy is not bad. You know, he's not as good as like Bill Burr or Dave Chappelle, but he's in that lane. Yeah. His podcast, like you say, like if Robert Downey Jr.'s on it, I'm going to be watching it. If he's got some random scientist on it that's going to talk about, so I'm not going to tune in. But I think it's very, very harsh, this sort of misinformation sort of thing that's thrown at him. But then, obviously, Jill Scott, was it Jill Scott?
No,
Erykah Badu.
No, it was India Arie.
Sorry, excuse me. But like she came out with something, and I was like, well, thinking. I said to you before, obviously he's in like a world of comedians where they all make jokes together, and there's different races, and they all make and it's okay to make those jokes. And in that sort of community, but if you're going to record it and put it out there, you do leave yourself hanging, don't you? You leave, and what Joe Rogan has said is that he doesn't make those jokes anymore. That was like 10 years ago. But you get rid of them. They've removed them now. Why have you kept them there? If you've changed as a person, then you get rid of it, really. Like, you know, you don't leave it out there for people to make a montage about. And the N-word stuff, the montage, I guess that's all context. There's no context to it. But the story about the cinema, I said to you, mate, I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I actually think he's a good guy deep down, but that story is disgusting. When I heard it, I was actually disappointed in him so much. Like, why would you say something like that? Like, that joke is not funny.
I was thinking a lot about that, and it's just like, to me, that seems like one of those off-the-cuff comments that somebody outside of a particular group would make about someone else or a group, you know what I mean, a certain environment that they're in. But because it's within the confines of, so that's like saying bunch of the man or whatever, and we go to, I don't know, we go to a certain area of the city or whatever, and there's like beer is around whatever, and then one man makes like a sly comment or whatever, and it's just like, you know, because it's in the confines or whatever, like no one really addresses it or no one really says anything about it, but it's not cool. Like it's not cool, blood, you know what I mean? Like you need to. Someone needs to pull you up, bro, because
when he makes that joke as well, he's like a naughty schoolboy face. He knows what
he says. Actually, that's a bit.
And he's like, we were in Africa, and it's like, mate, like you've literally crossed the line.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you were, blood.
And the thing is, like, I get it. Like, he thinks he's in a room full of friends making jokes, and that's what his podcast is, and that's why his podcast is what it is, because it's literally a man being just a normal guy being himself. You know, he likes to go hunting with a bow and arrow. You know what I mean? He freezes his elk and like
that's what he's on.
Yeah, he's a comedian. He makes jokes that are controversial, but like don't record it and put it out there when you know like it's that crossed, and he knows it did. I think he knows it did.
He does, and he even said that. I heard someone that I can't remember what I was watching, but someone had a conversation, and I think he said something along the lines of, he's glad it's kind of come out because it's something which he knew was out there, and he kind of wanted to sort of address it. Yeah. But I'm just like, you left it out there. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of think that like, and I think there's a sort of arrogance of like, I don't need to deal with it. I can just kind of just leave it. And I think to your point about the echo chamber, I think what it is that. My theory is that his audience is quite specific. It's kind of like wider America.
So them are not going to bat an eyelid when certain.
And I think
question of content.
So what then happens is then like people, and another thing that is people that are diehard fans that will kind of just excuse it and just kind of just brush over it. And I think what then happens is when people that don't usually listen to Joe Rogan kind of hear it like, yo, wait, you said what? Do you know what I mean? That's what's been on there for time. Do you know what I mean? And I think as well, people that are big fans have probably evolved with him over the time as well. So they'll probably be like, oh yeah, but he's not like that anymore. Do you know what I mean? But it's kind of like, well, this is new people hearing it, so it's kind of like you can't.
You need to deal with it, bro. You know what I mean? You can't just excuse. You can't just brush it over. And you've got to explain. You have to deal with it. You know what I mean?
You've got something to answer for when you. It's all right saying the N word in context if that's what you think is fine to do. I'm not defending that in any way, but in his philosophy, if that's fine, then you've got to explain that. But you can't explain that joke away.
No.
The joke is I think it was in there. He said that was a consciously racist joke.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
That's like you saw it saying telling a story or it's lyrics to a song or something like that. You might be able to talk your way out of it, but you can't talk your way out of that joke. And I think he knew that. But I don't think his apology was necessarily great. I think it was more just I've changed. Let's move on. And like we talk about his fan base is quite forgiving and they're very diehard. I mean, like Izzy Adesanya, the MMA fighter,
yes,
came out to bat for him.
He did, yeah.
He was like, how long are they sitting there listening? Because he's made over like so many episodes, like 10,000 episodes or something crazy, and someone's obviously sat there and waited for them, to make these recordings, to really sort of try and discredit him.
And somebody probably has, but I think the thing is that it's out there. Do you know what I mean? So the fact is, whether someone did that or not, the stuff is out there. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Do you think like I think as well, when it comes to sort of Joe Rogan, I think the reason why his apology was so sort of poor as well, because it's like I've got black friends. Our friends with Joe. This that, and I think with that it's kind of like. People are like, well, bro, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Some people are literally like, I don't care. Like, just because you've got a couple of black friends does not mean that you are not.
And this is it though. We've had this conversation time and time again with people who aren't black. You can't use the N-word, and even if your friends give you the N-word pass, you're going to use that around some other N-words who are going to act real N-ish. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because that's the behaviour that they let you get away with, like the wider audience are not going to stand for it. So you should know full well that maybe even with them you shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean?
I think as well, like with cancel culture as well, with him, I think there was a big conversation about Spotify's going to just lock him off, and I think to your point, what you mentioned earlier as well, there was a big part of it was talking about him spreading misinformation about COVID and stuff like that, and I think when it comes to like responsibility, I kind of think to myself like if somebody one thing I would say, if I, for example, this podcast, if I say something and somebody takes that as gospel, is that really do you know what I mean? Is it do I say that I'm an expert in whatever field what I'm talking about? So I think like
well this is Joe Rogan. Sorry to interrupt you, my friend, but like this is Joe Rogan's thing. He's just like, I'm an idiot. I'm a comedian. I hosted the Fear Factor program. I comment on the UFC. Nothing that I talk about or say should be taken as like any kind of gospel or any kind of scientific fact. And I think he has a point. You know what I mean? I think he does have a point, but I think when people are pointing to him saying, well, this man is sort of racist, why are so many people following him? like that's why they want to shut him down. And I think a lot of people do obviously just hate the fact that they make music. They pour their heart and soul into their art, and he gets paid 100 million, like just to talk shit with his boys.
He was leading the charges back on Spotify real quick as well. Like he snuck that back on, and quite a few of them are already back on there. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just phoned in outrage.
But I think
justifiably, but it's phoned in outrage.
But I think I mean, with if we're talking about like the misinformation stuff, it's kind of. Do you think people like just because you're a celebrity, people just for you that what they're saying is gonna be accurate 100%? Or for example, like if you look at what happened with Whoopi Goldberg, let's say for example, with what she said, she made a comment about the Holocaust. I think she basically said that. Along the lines of the Holocaust wasn't necessarily about race.
It wasn't about race. It was about it was like about discriminating.
Yeah, it was more so about people being inhumane and
about inhumanity.
Yeah. So what I want, and basically she based on what she said, she was basically trying to say, look, because the European Jewish people involved in that were white and the Germans were white. She was basically saying, well.
It's not racist.
Yeah, it wasn't about race. Now she then was kind of suspended for a while, and she had to sort of like apologize and that sort of thing. And I kind of think to myself like, do people think that just because she's Whoopi Goldberg that she's an expert or she is 100% correct in what she's basically saying? You know, whether she's right or wrong, or whether people feel she's right or wrong, I guess that's her opinion. But people have viewed it as that is anti-Semitic, and I kind of think that I don't know. I'm a bit torn on that on the basis that it's her view, it's her opinion. Everyone can kind of see what she's trying to say. I'm not sort of educated on that subject enough to know whether what she's saying is completely accurate. I can see what she's trying to say. Yeah. But at the same time, do you think what the repercussions of that conversation were deemed appropriate?
I don't know, man. It's like okay, I don't want to be selective about what I try and justify and what I'm outraged about. Because there've been other instances where, for instance, like she's made a comment which is around the travesties around the Holocaust and whatnot, and the impact it's had on the Jewish community and whatnot. And she can't really speak about how they think or feel or whatnot. But she made a comment from the outside, and it's not been received well. We can use it as a teachable moment, but I've seen other instances where someone has made a similar comment, and they're just like, we don't want to listen to you. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, I feel it was like who is it? Oh, it's slipping me. So I thought about this already as well. You'll have to come back to that probably. Yeah, there's been instances where certain celebs have spoken or something. It's like, well, we don't want to hear from you. You know what I mean? Like, who gives a F what Ja Rule thinks? You know what I mean? Like,
was Ja Rule thinking in time like this?
Yeah, like Wiley's done. Wiley's done for making sort of Jewish sort of exclamations and stuff. But Gina Carano, who was in The Mandalorian, like she got completely cancelled, man.
And she, do you know what?
She compared something to the Holocaust. And like, to be fair, like if you think she compared, was it conservatives to Nazis or something? The treatment of conservatives
to how the
And the thing is, like, if you I don't, you two must, like, there's no sort of specific point I can think of, but in the 38 years I've been on this planet, how many times have people been called a Nazi whenever they uphold a rule? Pretty strict, if someone's late a lot, you're a time Nazi, or you're a grammar Nazi if you're supposed to. It's always been that thing it's always that thing in the back of everyone's mind that they used to compare everything to.
That's true. That's very true.
But nowadays we live in a time where you can't say anything that's remotely, upsetting. And I think Whoopi Goldberg's been a victim of that, to be fair. She's got an opinion on it, whether we agree with it or not. She meant no harm with it, and then she's been suspended, you know.
Well, she considers herself Jewish, because the last name of Goldberg. It's not a real last name, but but she considers herself a Jewish person. So you kind of think to yourself, like, okay, so as a Jewish someone who considers herself Jewish, would you then be purposely spewing anti-Semitic
harmful rhetoric about something you relate to, you know?
And I kind of think, like, look, my view is, instead of suspending her, why not just then get some more people from the Jewish community onto the show,
talk about it,
to have a conversation about it?
Just come out and say we don't agree with it. What used to happen would be the TV company or whatever would say we don't agree with this person's views, and then we'd all move on.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think they have with it, but the thing is, it's like the current climate that we're in now is there has to be like an instant like knee-jerk reaction, which is, you know what I mean, suspension or, you know what I mean, removing the bag or that type of thing. Because
what does it do though? It's kind of, because what happens is you apologise, but you don't really apologise because that's what your view was, and you know deep in your heart that you didn't mean any harm by it. That which is basically your viewpoint. But I guess my point is that if you would have actually had more people on, because there's probably a lot of people that agree with what Whoopi said, and there's a conversation about whether people deem, you know, the Jewish community a race or religious group or whatever. So that's another conversation of the day. But my point is that there's some people that agree with what she said. So why not just then get people from the Jewish community in to have a conversation and maybe educate her as to why they feel that what she said was incorrect? Because that would be more beneficial to the entire viewing public. Because
that's not entertaining.
Yeah, true.
That's not entertaining. Ironically about that, the Whoopi Goldberg and the teachable moment, I was reading about it, and there's the leader of the ADL or whatnot is who she's apologised to and whatnot, and she's kind of got in touch with her just about trying to educate herself and this, that, and the other. But then I was reading about what their documentation is, and now because of what she said, they're going back to update what they class as racism because it didn't take into context, like, let's say, harmful language to like other groups whatnot, which aren't basically black or Asian or Indian or whatnot. You know what I mean? It's like, so I guess something good has come out of it because it means, as with anything, times have moved on. It's, you know what I mean? Like it's,
you know, the Irish are there. Like, come on, it's going to be our turn soon. and then ginger people as well. Like, come on. Like, when's it going to be our time?
Well, do you know what? Did you see what happened with Jimmy Carr as well?
Yeah, of course.
Jimmy Carr, that was a bit of a wild joke. So,
well, the thing is, I watched the special on Netflix, and the joke was pretty bad. But after it was finished, I forgot about it, and I guess that's because, you know, maybe I've watched too much comedy. Like, you become desensitized to sort of you know, horrible jokes. You know, maybe as someone who does find a horrible joke amusing, whether you know, but right or wrongly. But yeah, it was like 2 months after its release, though, when it sort of became a thing. It's like someone someday was like, oh, wait a minute, I don't like that joke. But it's like, it was made 2 months ago. And then, you know, I think the thing about Jimmy Carr is he's a comedian, and people are going to go watch him to make jokes, whether some people are outraged or not. And if you're outraged at a comedian, you tend to sort of, you're just helping them out, really, man. You're giving them free advertising.
He leans into it. Cause like, I'm going to get cancelled for this. Because I saw it. I'm going to get cancelled. Exactly. He's preempting the cancellation.
With that joke, normally whenever I've seen a joke which is sort of like teeters on the edge of being racially insensitive or teeters on the edge of, you know what I mean, offending a particular group, there's either a callback, there's a story behind it, there's a message behind it and whatnot. But he was just literally saying, well, I'm not going to cancel this, and then just said something outrageous, you know what I mean? So to me, his apology,
he leads into that, though.
You know what I mean? His apology is disingenuous, and that's why I don't fully back him on that one way. I understand comedians.
I didn't hear his apology though. What did he even say?
I don't think he apologised.
He just kind of backtracked.
Did he apologise?
He just backtracked on it, just like, you know what I mean. But in most instances where there's as I say, most instances where there's like a harsh joke or whatever, there is some sort of context or some sort, you know what I mean, something that you can kind of connect to. And you can think, all right, you know what, on the line or out of order, but I can see where it's come from, or I can see the story you're trying to make, or I can see the path you're trying to take us down. But that was just the outright. I'm gonna say some shit for clicks.
But when you actually hear the joke, it's the mechanics of the joke. The joke's not really about making a joke about sort of the traveling community. It's actually about the fact that he's making that the Holocaust is involved in the joke, almost like that. And I think that's the problem with the way it's been taken, is that the traveling community is just treated so sort of like they're not considered. That no one cares about them. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like they're the last group of people you can make fun of. You know, and that's why I was making the joke about the Irish people. Like, you know, one day they're going to be like, they'll stop making Irish jokes. You know, because like there's jokes about so many different people, like Liverpudlians. I'm sure they can't wait for their time in the sun as well. But like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think as well, what doesn't help as well is that you get a sort of clip of this is what the joke was, and you don't see the lead up, the context.
But like Chris said though, like the joke is literally, let's try and get cancelled. I'm going to tell you a horrible joke now.
That's what I saw as well.
That's literally.
I thought there was more to it.
The theme of his special is, can I get cancelled or not? Like that's the joke. Like this is why for someone like him, that's actually quite good publicity. Is like, oh, this guy's so offensive. Because some people actually want to see that.
Yeah.
Do you think you can sort of get? Because I think there's what you find is a lot of comedians will defend other comedians because for the culture of comedy. And so even when you think like with the Joe Rogan stuff, there'll be some comedians that be like, you know, I can see what you're trying to do, and it just didn't work. The joke didn't land or whatever.
Well, Dave Chappelle, when he got the Twain Award, he said that, you know, he's got those comedians that are racist, but like, you know, as a comedian, he fights for their right to make that joke, you know. And like I said to you, like we've spoken about before, like Joe Rogan's actually quite good friends with Dave Chappelle, and I think he's the sort of barometer in the comedy world of saying if Dave thinks it's okay, then it's all good. You know, and I think that is the comedian's sort of vibe, is that. But I guess comedians have their own community, and they can have that in private if they want to publicise it and they want to put it out there. Nowadays, there is that backlash, and you can't really complain about it if you know it's there. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's like if you know that what you say is going to cause an outrage, and you say it anyway, like, you know, you don't really have cause to complain anymore. You know, we live in a society it's established now.
Well, you know what? I saw an interview with Cat Williams recently. Well, I'll say recent, it's probably about a year ago. And he basically said, which I was quite shocked to hear from him, he basically said, in today's time, if you're making jokes, if you can't make a joke without punching down, in the sense of kind of belittling the community, then you're not very funny. Which I kind of was strange hearing it from Cat, because he's quite a wild boy, but in a sense of what he's basically saying is that if you're funny, you should be able to make jokes about anything. And I think if you specialise and if you focus on punching down, then
you're not funny.
You're kind of a bit of a one-trick pony.
Well, the thing is, I mean, again, this is something we spoke about in private, but you know, people talk about white privilege or whatever, but there's definitely a comedian privilege. It really does exist, where it's like, if I'm a comedian, there's like this philosophy that I can make a joke about anything, and that shouldn't be a problem. You know, Ricky Gervais fought really hard for it on Twitter about, you know, you should be able to make a joke about anything, and it's like, no matter, you know, if you're offended, it's your fault, don't listen, sort of thing. And I do think that's like a comedian's privilege, where that they refuse to adapt to a change in time that we're living in.
Like, you should be able to make a joke about anything, but you shouldn't be exempt from the consequences of said joke.
Yeah, freedom of speech, fine. Freedom of
you can be free to say whatever you want.
Yeah. You've got you know, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like you have to accept the consequences of what you say or what your actions are. You can't use comedy as an excuse.
Yeah.
Even if people laugh, even if 50,000 people go to your gig, you know, you've still got to sort of think about the millions of people that have social media, that, you know, that everything's out there now. And whether you like it or not, everyone has a voice now. Even people that maybe are too stupid to deserve one.
Yeah.
I think as well, you've got some comedians as well that literally had like a cult following, and then, you know, who probably enjoyed that sort of humour. And then the bigger that the comedian then gets and gets more mainstream attention, when he starts getting on a larger stage, that's when literally everyone's like, wait a minute, I didn't like that joke.
Yep.
Kevin Hart, case in point. Kevin Hart, Kevin Hart's first 3 stand-ups, it was pretty much free. saying what he wants, delivering it, and they were genuinely funny. And then all of a sudden, it was the Oscars came up or something like that.
Yeah, the Oscars.
And then people, well, let me just see what the track record's like. And all of a sudden, no, we don't like that. We don't like that. It's like, and the jokes that he's making, it's on the edge or whatnot. But you can understand what he's doing with it and where he's going with it and whatnot. And it's like, for instance, the one about smashing a house over every child if they're gay or whatnot. Like, you're not physically going to do that, but I can understand why someone who's gay or whatnot and from a young age would feel triggered by that. But again, that was all it took to get him out the paint.
But at the time, if you think about it, back then, no one batted an eyelid. Which kind of brings me to our conversation about
with Eddie Murphy.
With Eddie Murphy Raw. When, like, if you watch Eddie Murphy Raw now, I'm like, boy.
Eddie Murphy delirious, man. But missed the T section at the start of it.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's one of the things where when we watched it when we were younger, when did it come out? 1985? When did it come out?
It's like 83, 84.
Like early 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So,
early.
Literally, like, when we were watching when we were younger, literally never batted an eyelid of it. Because that was the time of the time. That was the time, you know.
Yeah, he's aggressively homophobic and delirious as well. You know, like almost, you know. But the thing is, look, I don't stick up for anything that's hateful. You know, if it's a joke, it's a joke. If you're saying it came from an honest place, you know, a place of innocence, then I have to take your word for it. But you know, in the 80s, it was the thing to do. Growing up, you know, like it took maybe like, you know, Graham Norton sort of punched through, and then, you know, there was like, you know, it was becoming more. But I remember being around like a friend's house. And I think his dad was saying to Graham Norton was on, he was like, I'm leaving the country when it comes compulsory. I think there's like 2 gay people on the TV at the time. But, you know, like that was the culture we lived in like 25 years ago, was that, you know, and Eddie Murphy was a product of his time, I guess, and made jokes of his time. You know, you can't defend them because nowadays they're ugly. You know what I mean? And if you watch the special, they're actually the weakest parts of the
exactly.
But it overshadows the genius of the other bits. But I think as well though, like, I guess the question is, can you judge a comedian based on old material when at the time that was deemed acceptable?
If they're still doing the same material, couple specials down the line or whatever, there's no evolution, they're not talking about the story, they're not bringing the pain, they're not, you know what I mean, putting a mirror up to society or whatnot, and it's just the same, like, rerun jokes or whatever, just in a different, like, delivery or different punchline, then sorry, I'm not accepting that.
No.
I'm not accepting that at all.
And again, you know, we talked about this before we started recording, but, you know, I do feel like it's important to have those historical signposts to show us how far we've come as a race, you know, as a you know, in the human race. That sounding cheesy, but, you know, we are becoming more and more aware of each other and what we go through day to day. You know, like the amount of stuff that I've learned the last 10 years is crazy. Like, you know, like I used to think that me and my family we're quite accepting people, we're quite open-minded. Turns out that people like all around me were like, you know, we're going through experiences that I didn't even know were there. You know, and there's that sort of angry denial at first where you think like, nah, that's not true. That's not around. It's been exaggerated. And then you speak to people and you're like, oh, I've been ignorant this whole time. And I guess, you know, that's why we need to see that we need to see it in films and music and stuff. We need to learn from it and move forward, and that's what we're doing. And I think stopping it and cancelling people when people are trying to move forward themselves is silly. Like, you know, if a criminal commits a crime, they get rehabilitated. You know, like humans should be treated like with forgiveness, and we need to learn. You know, if a comedian makes a joke 30, 40 years ago, you know, 30, 40 years later, you can't just turn around and say, well, no, we don't like you anymore. Do you think you look at the career, you look at, you know, who they are now?
Ever evolving.
Well, I was just going to say, actually, because obviously as a society, you can clearly see that there has been evolution in terms of thought and how people view certain particular groups and that sort of thing. So if we as a society can evolve, do you think people can evolve as individually? Because, for example, we live in a culture now where a lot of people go back and dig up old tweets and stuff from celebrities and stuff, and some of the stuff that they've said when they were younger, and some of the stuff that I've seen on some of it is absolutely wild, vile. But my point is, and they basically say, look, that's not me anymore. And there's a conversation to be had about, some people are like, well, you said it, so whatever. But then it's kind of like, how do you navigate through that? Because if as a society, we, you know, if you look at how what things that were said back in the day and how we view things as a whole, do you think that we should be treating this, you know, keeping that same energy with people who have had old tweets dug up and said that, well, I'm not that person anymore. I've evolved.
Show and prove, isn't it? You know what I mean? But show and prove. It's not through words. It's not through words. It's through action, isn't it? So cool. If that's who you were then, but then as time's gone on or whatnot, you know what I mean. You don't have to publicize absolutely everything you've done, but the people around you, your actions will kind of give evidence that you know what I mean. You've moved on from that, but to evolve, there needs to be a catalyst. You know what I mean? There needs to be something that happens in your life or whatnot, or that happens around you, which kind of triggers you to change or think differently or move or act differently into it.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at, like, you know, you'll have to look at an individual's person and the people that he interacts with day to day, like the peers. I think that's why a lot of white people do, you know, jump to, I've got friends that are black, or I've got friends that are this, that are that, because, you know, if you think about it, you know, like they're the people that defend you, really, that know you as a person, you know, and would these people associate with you if you were a hateful person? You know, if you were a bad person, like if your best friend was black, you know, for real, that person knows you inside and out, you know, and I think that's why a lot of people do jump to that as a way to sort of, like, you know, protect their brand, if you know what I mean, their reputation, because all that really matters really are the people in your inner circle. Really, you can worry about social media and you can worry about your career, but you don't want to lose your friends and your family, like, you know, and they're the ones that mean something to you. So, you know, I think that's the sort of key identifier for me for if someone is a decent person or not, is like who do they associate with, who associates with them, who's going to come out and fight for them. You know, you look at James Franco, like Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, they're all just shitting on him now, you know, because they see him for who he is, and they've, you know, if they really believed he was a good person, I don't think they cover their arse and just dump on him. I think they genuinely see, like, that he's a bad person and they've distanced himself.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if they just stuck by him, I'd probably be a bit more like, maybe you know.
I think as well, like, I think it's a lot of time it depends on proximity of relationship as well, and friendship, because there's some people that, like, I've got some close white friends who I would literally know that they would never say or don't have certain views on certain things, and if they did, it would probably, like, turn my life upside down. But then I've got some who, like, are associates. And it's kind of like, I didn't, you know, it would surprise me if they did say it, but you never really know. Because it's like, all right, so one guy I know, I remember years ago, he basically messaged me and he was like, yo, I got into some trouble and somebody accused me of racially abusing him or something like that. Can you be like a character reference to say that I'm not racist? I was like, bro, like...
But what did you say?
I'm just like, yo, the thing is, like, I know him, but I don't know him. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just like, bro, I don't really know, like, you know what I mean? Like, you could have said whatever in it, do you know what I mean? So, it's things like that you kind of think, I think a lot of it does depend on proximity of, like, how close you are to that person. But do you really know that person? Do you know what I mean?
It's just that's what I'm trying to say, is that, you know, if you see someone who's, like, in a circle, you know, will fight for them, you know, like, you know, you have to sort of think, well, you know, why would they stick up for someone if they, you know, and I guess that's for me, that's the barometer really of whether a person's coming from a place where they've made a mistake, you know, or they're ignorant or something like that, or whether they are just, you know, not a very good person, basically, you know. Yeah. And I've come into contact with people that I thought were all good, and they've said a couple of things, and it's like, maybe I shouldn't be.
I don't need to be around you.
Yeah, and maybe that's just, but then you have to treat people like you want to be treated. When I look at other people, I treat them by my own standards. You know what I mean? So when I look at Joe Rogan, you know, I followed him for years, been a fan. He made a few mistakes, and then I was like backing him, and then the Planet of the Apes thing, like, broke me, man. It was just like, I've been backing you all this time.
And you've kind of let me down.
Yeah, but then when he says I made that joke 10 years ago and I don't make that joke anymore, it's true. He hasn't made a joke like that. That's probably the only instance I can think of where he's made a joke like that.
But I think as well, though,
it's like, well, maybe you have changed, maybe I don't know, but like it definitely rocked me a little bit.
I think as well, though, when that stuff came out, and if something like that did come out of somebody else, if you're not like a fan of that person, if it's something that came up years ago, you don't know how they've evolved or whether they have evolved. And I think that's probably why some people are probably jumping in front of Rogan and say no, because I don't know what sort of material he says now, something he says now. To be fair, I did hear him say something wild, but I don't know how old it was. It was basically when he said there was a mixed race guy on there, and he basically said,
black body and a white mind.
So you got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, best of both worlds.
The best of both. You got the body of a black person and the brain of a white person. Now, to me, listen,
the studio he was in he was in before. So, but the thing is,
I didn't know how old that.
But he was in that studio for a while.
That's a wild statement.
He was in. That's an outrageous statement.
Who was he talking to?
I don't know.
Was it another comedian, or was it literally like?
I don't know. It was. I saw the clip and
I've seen the clip. Yeah.
And I was like, why would you even say something like that? So you basically, and that just see, and sometimes with Joe, I kind of think he's just a bit of a, he's a bit of a Neanderthal, and in way he thinks is basically saying that, black bodies are athletes and strong and this and that.
But then that's genuinely eugenics.
He came out. He was talking to Jordan Peterson, just two white men chilling, and he was on about how like black's not really a colour anymore. People aren't actually.
That was another wild one as well.
And that's the guy who's stoned should be having that conversation on his settee. Watching Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. You don't record that shit and talk to 10 million people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like. That if you want to talk that kind of silliness, again, I don't think that's hateful. It's just so blindly ignorant.
Yeah.
And that should be edited out, because you should be thinking like, should I have said that stuff about? Because that is so stupid. Like,
that circles back to what I said earlier about certain comments that you make when you're in the confines of a group where all the people are just like you or whatever, and you'll say something about someone outside of whatever your quote unquote group is, and it's kind of like it's a saucy comment. It's like, should you really be making that anyway? You know what I mean?
The thing is, the annoying thing about stuff like that is you find that people are having those conversations with people who really have no idea. Like he was talking to this other guy, and I swear the other guy was meant to be some sort of white supremacist or something like that, who had like some wild views.
He's a conservative, a very strong conservative. Like one of the Mumford and Sons guys, like he got kicked out of the band for supporting him. So like he's just one of the people that if you're a liberal you can't be associated with that guy because he's poison.
But it's like why would you be having that conversation about colour and what black people want to be called with someone who's not black? It just doesn't make any sense.
The problem is though, right? And I'm not defending it. I'm really not, because I think like it is, like you say, it's wild. But it's something that two stoners would talk about when they're just harmlessly just talking about everything. Like, I haven't smoked in 20 years, but like when I did, I probably would have had a crazy conversation. Would have started somewhere, it would end up there, and it gone there, and maybe I might have touched on pigmentation of skin somewhere, maybe, possibly. But you don't record that shit, and you don't put it out to 10 million people who literally are. A lot of them are very, very. They don't have dads. They're very, very, they're easily influenced. Everything that Joe Rogan tells them is gospel, and they're going to go and repeat that when they go to school. You know what I mean? And just, it's very, very, very dangerous.
That's not a stoner comment, but conversation, because it kind of is. You know what I mean? It's
just,
yeah. Well, it is. You know what I mean? You're just in the cut. It's just you're in the cut, and the conversation just flowing or whatever, and you just say something off the cuff. You don't really think about the consequences of it. But you're right. It should have been cut out. Like, what is his editing team doing? Is the question.
I don't think they do edit it. I think they just freeform it. But I think when if you're getting paid 100 million by Spotify and the magnifying glass is on you now, are you really, really going to say that? And the thing is, like, I would never defend anyone for anything they say, but I try to be objective when we're having a conversation, the three of us, thinking, well, why would he say it? If that makes sense. Like, I don't get it. And I think that's the problem, is none of us get the reasons why he makes these jokes, why he says these things, because they are just stupid. And he comes out and goes, "Oh, it's okay, I'm stupid." And it's like, well, you're stupid, but you also know that you being stupid makes all this money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you know what you're doing is a thing. It's a shtick.
I do think though that, you know, some people who can't articulate themselves properly shouldn't be having conversations about certain things in public, or shouldn't be publicised. I think Wiley's biggest problem is just that he is a bit of an idiot, and Wiley, for example, can't articulate himself properly. So he comes on, rambles some BS, and it's like literally cancelled himself, and it's. Again, I don't know necessarily the point he was trying to make, but I do know that Wiley, this is the first rant that Wiley's had.
I think
and
he's
9 out of 10 of his rants.
though, hasn't he? And then he's like believed it. It's like someone who watched Loose Change back in the day, like, and then all of a sudden 9/11's like an inside job, you know.
Well, I think
he's watched a documentary or two, and then he thinks it's fact, and he's just spouting out.
And he's had like a bad experience with somebody from like that community, and I think he's basically
that's the bigger problem just in society in general, and that's something one day we'll have to have a conversation about. It's just like one bad experience with someone from a particular group shouldn't tarnish your whole view of that group.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of problems in general come from.
Yeah. And a lot of them have never really met certain people from certain communities, so they are going based off old stereotypes and what you believe that they're supposed to be.
I mean, like, I don't know about you two, but I don't, like, Nottingham's not really prevalent in terms of like the Jewish community. Like, I know there probably is, like, but I think I've met one person. Like, I've had one friend I think that's like half Jewish. So like everything that I know about Jewish people is from what I've seen in movies or and obviously like because of that I don't speak of it. I don't have an opinion on anything to do with that.
Right?
Do you know what I mean? Like,
but it's okay to not know, you know.
Yeah,
it's all right.
You know what? And the thing is as well, I was saying the other day, if I was a celebrity, there were certain subjects I was like, I'm not going to comment on.
I'm not the guy.
I'm not the guy. Because no matter what you say, it can be taken the wrong way. Like, do you ever see, like, do you see the Brit Awards when, because with the Brit Awards, they've changed the categories now, so it's like, is it gender neutral?
It's gender, yeah.
So you've
fluid,
basically, so you basically got just best artist.
No best male, no best
so
female.
no best male and best female. So obviously Adele drops out.
Still the Adele Award, isn't it?
Still Adele. So the
best Adele or Ed Sheeran if Adele was like adding it off.
It is. No, it is.
I don't want to talk about the Brits, man. The table's going to go up.
No, trust me, it was the Adele show. But the point is that she came up, she won the award, and she was like, you know what? I understand why they've done this, but I quite like being
a woman,
a female singer.
Yeah.
And then basically it was like,
they're
Adele is
chewing her up, aren't they?
Yeah, Adele is.
Should be right though. Should be alright.
Should be fine.
But the point is that
okay.
the point is that saying something like that causes such a massive sort of uproar, and I think she could have. I guess if there was more of a conversation, she could have said, "No, what it is? People know what people are trying to say, but they're just."
Dying to be insulted,
Do you know what I mean? But it's like, you know what she's trying to say, and you know for a fact that she's got quite a large gay following, so you know for a fact that she's not, trying to disrespect that particular community. So it's kind of like, but she's not trying to say that. But instead of actually thinking, I see what she's trying to say, you're basically saying, cancel Adele. Like, come on, man.
Okay, cool. Also, let's keep it true. Can people really get cancelled? Because the long and short of it is, 6 months later, you start easing your way. Like, I can't really think of anybody who's like
Kevin Spacey, maybe.
Kevin Spacey, maybe. Yeah, but no, see,
but that's a different.
No. But I think that's the point I want to get to. It's like it's only in extreme cases, like Kevin Spacey, Mason Greenwood, Gylfi Sigurdsson, all been sent to the shadow realm, and it's only in.
Shadow
realm. Yeah, anyway.
Am I lying?
No, it's true.
They've all been sent to the shadow realm, and it's only because of what? It's only because they're like. There's one common factor, and it's to do with like there's two common factors.
You've got to commit a serious crime.
Yes, serious. It's either kids or against will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But bar that, saying something a bit fruity about somebody else or whatever, you know what I mean? You can pretty much you can walk that. You can walk it, blood. And there's only really a few instances where somebody will really get you out the paint.
Who's actually been cancelled for saying something wild?
I mean, R. Kelly's pretty much done, but again, we're on about verbal though. We're on about verbal though. We're not on about that.
But R. Kelly again. Okay, we knew about this in 90, 2000.
Was it Chris Rock? Chris Rock did a bit about it, didn't he? Like
Chris Rock was doing jokes in like 96.
Yeah.
Like the Aaliyah thing was 92. Like Boondocks are running jokes about this in like the 2000s, bro. Like there have been multiple instances about this guy where he's been cancelled, and yet still, if you go to certain areas of America and say that, there are going to be aunties who are going to run you down in the street.
Yeah.
So. Until they put him in the bin, really.
Well, I think a lot of that is to do with blind followership.
Yeah, fandom.
Fandom.
It's extremist. Like with Michael Jackson's another one.
You know, listen.
Fam, listen.
You try to say Michael Jackson was a paedophile, yeah? Literally, certain people will take your head off.
The thing is though, like there's a few things. There's a few safety nets. Like Joe Rogan has his own platform. Yeah. You can't take that away from like Whoopi Goldberg. You can take her platform away. Michael Jackson and R. Kelly have like Bump and Grind and like Billie Jean. Like there's certain things that like you don't want to part with Billie Jean. You don't want to part with. I don't want to part with Vibe. I don't want to lose that song. Like when that song comes on, man. Like there's certain things that like that sort of tether you to the ground for as long as possible before that whirlwind like takes you up and blows you away. Do you know what I mean? And
black people struggling for a while at weddings, man.
Yeah,
when happy people.
There's no more happy people than stepping in the name of love, right? You know what I mean?
Listen. Anyhow, Cameo. Yeah, something comes out about Cameo.
Bro, yo, listen.
I was the same. You know when with the BBC like Jimmy Savile stuff. I was sitting there going, please not Bruce Forsyth. Please not Bruce Forsyth. Like that would have ruined. That would have ruined me, man. And you know what? Yeah. Imagine, and you know what? It turned out he was all good, man. Like, and he went. You know what I mean? He left this earth, man. Like, I was like so happy, man. Like he weren't one of those ones. Do you know what I mean?
Bruce was a guy still.
But really, like cancel culture, all it seems to be at the minute is your name circulates a bit more in the public more than it normally would. You might take a break, come back a bit later. You still got your core audience. You mobilise them. Yeah. You slowly build back up, and then you're back in the media.
Wiley seems like he's. Maybe it's because I don't really know where to find him anymore. No, but he seems like Wiley. No, he is in the shadow realm. No, he's there. He's on the bench.
Think about how long ago Wiley said what he said. Wiley has been done in the streets since then.
He's still put. But the thing is, he's still bound. Okay,
because you got to think about it. The problem with Wiley and the sad thing with all social platforms banned him. So technically, you can't really. Where are you going to hear Wiley?
Yeah.
They literally all platforms banned him.
Maybe when Donald Trump starts his platform soon, like maybe he can jump on that. You never know.
I'm telling you, like
that Truth platform,
Wiley literally, like you can't. You'll see Wiley pop up. Like I've seen pop up on Shade
with alt accounts or whatever.
Yeah, but the thing is, like,
the beginning of him been in.
Is he really got A-listers? Like this guy's like Wiley.
No, I haven't seen Wiley Godfather 3. Like it's a third account, bro.
It's radioactive though, because like for example,
the Marcus Rashford thing in the photo.
Exactly. So people don't even want to be anywhere near him, because one thing I do hate about cancel culture is the whole thing of like if you say something and you associate with that one person, or that is your friend, let's say for example, you must agree with everything that he said. Do you know what I mean? And I really
I hate that.
Dislike that because it's kind of but that's what I'm saying. So it's like, for example, I don't know, Whoopi Goldberg. It's like, okay, so if you're friends with Whoopi Goldberg, obviously you must be anti-Semitic. Don't think it works like that.
Yeah, I hate that.
It really doesn't work like that.
I hate going back and finding historical stuff. I really do hate that as well. But I think that's the worst one. And the worst thing about that one is there's Rashford and there's Lingard. But because Rashford's more famous, no one gives a shit that
because they're trying to get him out of the paint for feeding the kids.
No one cares.
It's more the fact that the more famous you are, the more open target you are. But like you say, 6 months down the line, the more famous you are, the more you've got room to breathe and more room to escape. And then the people with marginal sort of celebrity are the ones that tend to get swallowed up, which is what happened to Wiley, I think. You know, it's hard to think of other examples though, but there's that. Is it Fox? Lawrence Fox? Like he's pretty much done over it as well.
Whoa! You say that though, but didn't he ran for like London Mayor?
Yeah, we didn't get it though.
He got deaded.
He got
He got deaded.
There's a handful There's a handful of people that get that, but yeah, there tend to be the people that are on the fringes of celebrity. Not
that's fair. Yeah.
Like you say, if you built a brand or a reputation, you can get it back. You know, you can wait. Chris Brown, think about what he did to Rihanna. Like he waited a year and started bringing out bangers again.
People are still acting like he didn't fist her up, bro. That's horrible, bro.
Yeah, do you know what?
I heard people giving me full album reviews on all 40 songs.
Do you know what? The thing is, yeah, when you have a large enough following and you've got people that blindly follow, it doesn't matter what they do. Because if you think about it, you look at someone like Kanye West, right? Mm-hmm. The amount of people that justify some of the foolishness that he does.
I miss the old Kanye.
I miss the old Kanye.
I want the old Kanye back.
Yeah, some of the stuff that people justify him doing and saying is wild.
You don't understand how long I stuck up for him, though. I stuck up for him. I mean, I even tried to defend Jesus is King or whatever it is. God is dinner.
Jesus is King album.
I even tried.
Hot garbage.
There was some good stuff in there.
There wasn't. No, you don't have to be polite. You don't have to be polite. Oh yeah, that was you at the time. Right?
He was like, no joke. I'm like,
it's garbage.
There's a sample in this. I'm like, just digging. Like I can see some. I'm trying to mine for goodness in it, but I stuck up for him for so long. I was like, he's a genius. Geniuses aren't quite there. Like Brian Wilson was a genius. He was not. Yeah. And then Don the 2's coming out. You think maybe this is going to be like his comeback, and it's like you got to buy the stem player.
Oh, yeah, that dropped today. That dropped today.
The stem player.
Yeah, what the album?
Apparently it dropped today. No, I've seen
people about the stem player or.
Yeah, I've seen people with Apple Music posts or whatever. It's no free promo free. Anyway, well, two things I want to say kind of about Kanye is that first and foremost, and most important, if you notice, ever since the Netflix documentary's out, he's behaving. Mm. So is that not just the while out for publicity too?
That is what he does. Whenever before
again we got caught up in it.
Before Washes in the Blood came out, he had like a week of mad stuff then as well. Before that single popped, I always say that because my missus she's a mental health nurse, and we'll be in the car and she'd be like, I'm so worried about him. When he was crying when he was on about having an abortion and stuff. She's like, I really worry about his mental health. And I was like, yeah, I know, it's scary. And then and then the next day he's like, check out my new album or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, is this what he does to drum up publicity for it?
I'll tell you something though, right?
It's pretty dark if it is.
I like his music. Not his recent stuff, but as a whole, I'm quite a big Kanye fan musically. But I've kind of... Some of the stuff he says is absolute nonsense. Him running for president, absolute nonsense.
No, it's madness, mate.
One thing I will say though, right, and because a lot of people said, people used to say, since his mum died, he's never been the same. And I was like, yo, listen, he's a grown man, nonsense. Have you seen that documentary?
Not yet. I'm gonna wait for all three.
Have you seen it? I've seen the first episode.
I'll wait for all three and I'll watch more.
Listen, I'm telling you, right. Watch that. I think you might have I think you might have a different view, man. That relationship he had with his mom. Seriously, it's nothing like I've ever seen. She was his biggest fan, biggest supporter. He comes round to see her. She's literally rapping a whole verse of his song. Kanye, I like that song that you did when you said bum bum bum, and she literally raps a whole verse. And he comes in and he's got a chain. Oh, Kanye, I love that chain. Literally, she was his biggest cheerleader, but also she was his sort of barometer of arrogance as well, because he basically says to him, look, just kind of be yourself and not be a dick, basically. Yeah. But he's like, do you think I'm being too arrogant? And she says, no, I think you're being just right. And this is early days. Now, having someone who can be that real and honest and be a supporter, I'm telling you, man, I never really, because again, this is old footage from where before he was even signed. And when he was doing early stuff with Rockefeller and stuff like that, and work on the blueprint and stuff like that. But I honestly, when you see it, you may have a different view of his mental health and why he is how he is Now, I'm not excusing stuff that everything that he says because some of the stuff is just nonsense anyway. There was definitely an issue there when he lost his mum because that relationship there, I've never seen anything like it. Seriously, in terms of a relationship like that, I've never seen it.
He paid for the operation as well that she died in as well. That must weigh like heavy on his mind without taking things too dark. Like he's never really talked about that, but I imagine that must be like, you know, that I can't imagine what it must feel like in his mind. The thing is though, like he after that though, he still made good music for a bit, and he still was sort of there. You know, my beautiful doctor was that was after
classic.
You know what I mean? That's probably that's his best work. That's all the albums he made before that.
Top 5 all time, maybe.
But that's all his other albums, and that was like the work. That's what he was building to. That was like you know all the amazing shit he was making. It was like the better than everyone, and it was literally just building up to that. It was like wow. So maybe after he made that, I think maybe that's when he started to realize like, well, what do I do now? How do I top this?
Yeah.
Whilst also burdened with the loss that he was going through, and I don't think hanging out with the Kardashians helps either.
Oh gosh,
because you know he's sitting there thinking, well, what you know, if I act crazy, man, like his family do, I can get myself more and more like popular. And
yeah.
I think now that the Kanye show is more important than his music to a lot of people. You know, what his behavior is more important than the music he puts out.
I think the problem is I have with it as well is that a lot of people excused his behaviour for a long time just because they're big fans of his music, and I kind of think that. And he said some wild stuff, and even now when he's talking about because he's in like him seeing that comedian, that Pete Davidson, and every other verse he's like guest verse is like, I'm gonna beat him up, and all and I kind of think like if people are like, yeah, Kanye, I'm like, come on, man.
People are chasing him off Instagram.
It's just this is stupid. Like this is blind people just following him blindly and just gassing him up. And I think the problem is that a lot of people in these circles are surrounded by yes men, and I think this is why a lot of people get themselves in trouble anyway. Because
why do you guys? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Just I have to ask what's in my head. Why do you think? Like after the baby stuff and the Marilyn Manson stuff, why do you think he sort of got them on board and is hanging out with them? What do you think that is for? Like, because I don't get what point he's trying to make with that.
I think it's arrogance. I think personally, I think there's a bit of a is a bit of a narcissist, and I think he basically feels like you guys are cancelled. Come with me, you'll be fine.
How long cancelled?
And I think. No one can cancel Kanye. So, like, if you come with me, you'll be fine. I think that's kind of what it's doing. Because, like, why purposely would you have those two people who recently have been proper.
Yeah, of course.
They've had a lot of, a lot of backlash against. Do you know what I mean? Because Marilyn Manson, some of the allegations against him are wild.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's not even good. He's never been good in my estimation. But, like, when he was at his peak, it was like 20 years ago. You know, like it was like around the time of Limp Bizkit and Kid Rock. So like, why does he think that like he's going to improve his music? You know what I mean? Like, what is he playing at? And yeah, the baby stuff. I know, like you chat a lot of nonsense, but I get it. But the Marilyn Manson, like, what point are you trying to prove by getting him on board? Like,
I think it's literally, and to be fair, there's no correlation between him and Kanye West. There's literally, I don't even know if they're even in the same circle. Just
marketing to me.
I bet Marilyn Manson was sat there in a room on his own thinking, this is it. And then his phone goes off and it's Kanye West. Yeah. And it's like sort of a movie, like, come with me, like, I'm going to look after you. And like, what? And then like Kanye's in a helicopter, like, sort of, like from the burning building, like, taking it, like, what is going on with it? I don't get it.
To me, it's just marketing. It's just that until proven otherwise. That's how I'm always going to see this. Type of stuff.
Like Brian Wilson from Beach Boys, like a band that I think is one of the greatest of all time. Like Brian Wilson heard Rubber Soul by the Beatles, and it was so good. Like the harmonies were so perfect. He was like, it was like, oh my god, like how do I beat this? And he spent so long trying to perfect it that like he sacked everyone in the studio. And there was a guy like mopping the corridor, and he's like, "You come in here. What do you reckon to this?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't really like this." He's like, "Right, you're the head producer now." Wow. Like, and I always I used to go, well, Kanye West is like Brian Wilson. He's a genius. He's eccentric. And then after a while, like, it's just like, I just can't defend that anymore. Like, about 5 years ago, I think it was like, I can't defend his genius anymore. Like, I still think he maybe is. I think he definitely was a genius. His genius has waned to the point where his music's not very good.
But I think he is probably uncancelable though. Because Because if you think about it, you think about him. All right, we're looking at it as people living in Britain, but imagine looking at him as like an American, and he was literally riding Donald Trump's nuts into the sunset, pretty much. Like he was literally hugging him in the White House and
we still roll with him.
He's wearing the hat.
Saying like you're like a father figure and stuff like that, and then he ran for president, and then it's kind of like people have now just kind of like. Now because he dropped an album, it's like, we're out with that.
That's what I'm saying.
And you kind of think that like that, you can see why he thinks he's invincible and why he thinks like, I can bring Marilyn Manson and them kind of people on because...
He can kind of do what he wants.
Yeah,
pretty much can.
I'll be honest with you, like it weren't until that stem player business that I literally was like, I'm done with him. I don't know why, but the stem player was the last straw. All the other things he said and done, I've been like... You know, I don't defend him anymore. I just let people say what they want to say and don't fight that corner.
Yeah.
But then the stem player, like, I was just like, what is he doing? Like,
that's the line.
The thing is, I can. The thing is with the stem player, I can see what he's trying to do, but we're not paying £250 for a stem player to listen to your album. I will be trapping out the bandwidth and I will have that by tomorrow morning.
I'm going to buy a Simple Simon from back in the day and then just listen to that and just play it at the same time. It's the same thing.
Listen, someone will have a link to me tomorrow and I'll be listening to it free of charge.
£250 for
listen, absolute nonsense. Not doing it.
The thing is, you're going to download it, it's going to be rubbish, and then you're going to think some people bought a £200 like I don't know what it is, like a little strobe light thing, just to listen to another terrible album.
Yeah,
because I don't think it's going to be good. I used to think like every album, this is going to be the one, and it's like that album's never going to come. I don't think, or if it is, it's like 10 years down the line, where he does like a Nas, and goes back to basics. But
has to bring somebody else in. That's how Nas found the formula. Like with Hit Boy, he brought somebody else and said, "Is Kanye really going to let somebody else come in?" And you know what I mean?
Mm.
These are the questions.
But no, I think in terms of cancellation, I mean, yeah, he does seem like he can't really do anything wrong. He alienated like his whole sort of, I don't know, like supporting Donald Trump, but like was such a kick in the teeth for a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? Like even for me, like I was astonished. It's like, what are you doing? You'll do anything to get publicity nowadays.
And I think, do you know what it is with someone like him as well, because he's on such a 180 in a sense of like 1 minute. If you look at some of his earlier stuff before, when he basically called out George Bush when Hurricane Katrina hit, it was like, George Bush don't care about black people. And you had Lama from Wasteboard, like, is it
Mike Myers is like,
he's like, that is literally what happens. He goes,
and then he throws to Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker just
Chris Tucker's like,
he throws to Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker's like, yo.
But the point is like going from that to then basically like hugging George Bush, hugging Donald Trump. It's just a wild change of events. So I don't know. If you were like, okay, so if you were sort of felt like you're going to be cancelled and you were getting a lot of backlash. So do you think the best thing to do is, because like you said, like who has really been cancelled from actually saying something wild? So do you think the best thing to do is to just lay low for a bit and then just wait for it to breeze over?
Bro, listen, the formula is simple. Store-bought apology, phone that in.
Store-bought apology.
Store-bought apology, phone it in, give it 6-9 months, and then after 6-9 months, start just making appearances with other people. Because right around now, maybe, I'll give it about another 3 months, we're going to start seeing Travis Scott again.
Oh gosh, I forgot about Travis Scott.
Thank you, the formula.
Gosh, yeah. No, but
Yes, so we're going to start seeing Travis Scott sometime in the next 3 to 4 months.
He was getting it, man.
Kanye was on about taking him to Coachella with him, weren't he?
Well, there you go.
He was getting it though. He was like the devil for like a good. But you're right,
literally
though.
The devil. He was like satanic rituals.
Gigs. But then again,
that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
But you're right. But I think as well, depending on the product that you push, it will depending on how receptive. Because I can remember when, if you look back to when the R. Kelly thing was going, the whole case was happening. this is going back to like late 90s, early 2000s when that was kicking off. The court case was going on, and then it was like, oh, cancel R. Kelly. Then he drops Remix to Ignition. Then everyone got amnesia.
Everyone forgot.
What I mean? So I think as long as you're pushing something like, if Travis Scott comes out with like a banger within the next few months, people are going to be like, if he comes up with a summer banger, then literally he eases his way back into it. So I think you're right. I think realistically, if you kind of lay low for a bit, but I think you know what it is as well though. You do need to kind of just do that apology and then just kind of fall back. But I think the problem is what some people have, and I think this was Wiley's problem at the start. He doubled down. He doubled down on it and was basically saying no. And then what then happened is, before he was able really to kind of like, expand his point, whether it was valid or not, it was kind of wiped out. Do you know what I mean? So
there is also like another way to get out of it though, and it's only for the super famous, which is like the Donald Trumps or even the Joe Rogans or the Kanye Wests, to hide in plain sight. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Eminem.
Eminem's case in point is just don't go anywhere, refuse to hide, and just keep fighting your fight. But you have to be like, again, you have to have a platform of millions, that you say that are diehard. Yeah. Otherwise, you do have to sort of just disappear for a bit, lay low, and then hopefully like everyone will move past it. But I guess, I don't know, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because like, how long do you want people to be punished for? The punishment has to fit the crime, I guess. Like Mason Greenwood you mentioned earlier, like obviously that's very, very serious. Like someone's opinion that's a little bit offhand nowadays, like I think trying to ruin a man's career and take away his bread, like and his and stop take away his family's like support seems a very, very strong reaction.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, let's be honest. When you think about it, like you look at someone like Jimmy Carr. Nothing's gonna happen to Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy Carr's
not a damn thing's happened to Jimmy Carr. So do you know what I mean? They'll forget about that within the next month. And then before you realise it, you never. If someone brings up, you're thinking, what are you on about?
Like, the money's in touring when you're a comedian. It's not in television as such. So as long as he can sell out arenas, like he's got that fan base that won't leave him because they want to hear the offensive jokes that he says.
I know he's not been cancelled, but what happened with Frankie Boyle?
Well, he just does gigs.
So you just said,
Frankie Boyle's still about.
He's still about because he was.
And he said some wild stuff back in the day.
When I thought about what Jimmy Carr said, I was kind of like that's reminiscent of
Frankie Boyle.
But do you know what's mad about Frankie Boyle is crazy liberal.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks he's the devil. Like he's this horrible man. Literally, like has a heart of gold. He just likes to go on stage and say horrible shit. And like, it's weird, isn't it? Like Joe Rogan's the same. Like Joe Rogan literally, like, for the most part is actually quite, it's quite liberal. I think one thing before we just sort of move on about anything else, but like I once got into I was on Facebook. Joe Rogan said something about trans people. It was to do with like MMA fighting, and like someone who transitioned shouldn't be allowed to fight women because they had like a man's bone structure and stuff. Yeah. And he was saying that if you declare it and someone wants to fight you, fine. But there was someone called, I think it was Fallon Fox, her name was, who wasn't telling people, going there and beating people up.
Crushing people. Is that when they crush that one? That person's
yeah. But then she ended up getting mashed up by another woman. Like someone went in the cage with her, and she wasn't that great. To be fair, she was but he had opinions on that were pretty strong. And people were like, you're anti-trans. And at the time, it was like, well, no, he has an opinion on MMA fighting trans people. It's not necessarily a broad one. But years later, like I listened to a podcast and he said something about trans people, and he still didn't quite grasp it. And I commented on this thing on Facebook, and I got attacked. I was like the Ukraine, mate. They came at me, mate. Like they came at me, bro. Like, and it was like, look, guys, read the article and then understand my comment. All I said was, he's quite a liberal guy. I wish he was so liberal about everything.
Yeah.
And was a bit more learned about the trans sort of situation. You know what you're talking about. She shouldn't go in there fighting people. Yeah, but I'm not on about that. I'm on about what he said now. No. You're a clown. And I think I'm sending a clown emoji like a million times.
The problem is that people
got absolutely bashed.
Some people are. Two things can be true. You can be a fan of somebody, but also hold them to account.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is people that blindly follow. you can't even criticize anything, and they'll basically be like, and they'll just jump down your neck. Be like, look, I like this guy too, you know. Like, I'm just not on his nuts like that.
But that's how toxic social media can be, you know. And I think when it's that toxic about, you know, a penalty shootout, you know, when our players like miss penalties and then they get absolutely like the worst abuse you can think of. If we can do that, to our people that are playing for our country, as soon as someone upsets you and says something you don't agree with, you're trying to cancel them. It's the same kind of people, which is why you have to take it with a grain of salt. A lot of this cancellation stuff, I think, because a lot of it is just toxic internet stuff, and a lot of people that have voices don't deserve them, but everyone has one now. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of uneducated people out there.
Yeah, that's that Miles saying is like, just because you got a phone and a Wi-Fi connection doesn't mean you should have an opinion.
Yeah, no, for real. But I think as well, like, you know, when people on the platform do put an opinion out there as well, or do you know, I think, you know, it's like when some people puts like a status on Facebook or something, and then which is a bit of a kind of a, you know, their view on something. You put on a public platform. So do you want people to just look at it and just not say anything? Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, and then when someone kind of challenges it, it's like they start getting defensive. It's like, but you've put that on a public platform for everybody to see, and that's your view on something. So surely you would expect somebody to challenge that. The one guy I know, he put something wide up, and I kind of like challenged it, and he kind of blocked me. And then years later, it was like, yeah, you know what, I was a bit weak-minded back then, and I didn't, you know, I shouldn't have done that. But it's kind of like, but why did you put that on a public platform? Do you know what I mean?
I believe this. I'm saying this, and you must agree.
Well, exactly. Do you know what I mean?
That's what it is. In my mind, you have to agree with this, and there is no discourse.
Yeah, I remember it was years ago now. I remember someone was saying like, how if someone put on Facebook, how can people watch the X Factor when on the other side there's like a thing for the troops, like some sort of celebration for the troops? And I was like, it's because it's boring and people want to watch the X Factor, right? And they were like, you scumbag, you know, you're not a patriot, and I'm like, I am, like, but like, you know, you can donate to like Help for Heroes, and then you can also watch, you know,
two things can be true.
You can watch Simon Cowell like razz a guy out who's just trying to follow his dreams. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got roasted, man. It's like, you're not a patriot. Like, my husband's in the army, he's gonna come and beat you up, and I'm like, well, I'm definitely not watching it now. If that's what you know.
No, but you know what it is. I think people lack comprehension, and I think people lack nuance as well. So I think what you'll find is that, and you'll see that with like with this government as well, and people like you got some people who will look at the end of the day, like if you're conservative, you're a conservative, but you can be conservative and still say that Boris Johnson's a waste man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you do you know what I mean?
He's not exempt from critique.
You being conservative got nothing with. It's nothing to do with you saying Boris Johnson's a waste man. So it's kind of like people feel that because they're very conservative that they have to blindly agree with everything that Boris says. But I know you don't agree with that though. No, I know you don't. Well, because you're a conservative, you feel that is literally you have to agree with that. But again, two things can be true. You can basically say, look, I am conservative, but I do not like
the current leader.
Yeah, Boris Johnson.
Because I was a big Corbyn guy, man. Like I got a lot of stick for it. A lot of people love me for it, but you know. But at the same time, I actually would say that Corbyn did this wrong, Corbyn did that wrong.
Yeah.
And people would come at me and attack me, going, "You're not Corbyn supporter. How can you say that?" And like, I'm supporting him. I care, so I've got an opinion. Like when you care about something, you have an opinion about it. And also, like, surely, like, politically especially, like, surely you can agree with a bit of this and a bit of that. Like, why has it got to be, like, tomato sauce and mayo? Why can't you just put both on your chips and have a nice time?
Yeah. Some stuff you're going to be liberal about and some stuff you're going to be conservative about. No one person should be all the way to one extreme, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, to be made that and that's a conversation of the day because I'm a big believer in that in terms of, like, people assume that, like, again, people lack nuance, so people just assume that you have to be 100% one and 100% the other, and no one really wants that.
No.
And if everybody wanted that, then you'd have a Corbyn, or you'd have like a deep conservative. Do you know what I mean? You know, if you look at like the Labour Party, say for example, this is why you've got your Keir
Starmer
rather than a Corbyn, because nobody really, some people don't want 100% hardcore Corbyn. They want someone who kind of treads the line, which is why you've got a Joe Biden instead of a Bernie Sanders, because Joe Biden kind of is not, he's more. It's somewhere in the middle, if that makes sense.
Well, the thing is though, like Corbyn and Sanders, man, they both got sort of cancelled in their own way. Just to bring it back to the topic of this show, mate, they got cancelled because the media didn't like what the threat to them, the threat to the establishment.
Yeah, and they were real.
Like, Corbyn literally, like, everything he said was like, bang, you're this, bang, you're that. Like, if when you have peace talks, you have to speak to the enemy. Yeah. Like, he's like, in the past, he's had meetings with these people. Like, that means he's friends with them. He's a sympathiser. I'm like, dude, you can't make peace without someone you need people to make peace with. But they got assassinated.
Yeah.
Like, Corbyn got assassinated by the media.
Fam, they're still assassinating him now. I saw something that got posted in I think it was the Daily Mail 2 days ago, where the guy made up a scenario in his head about how Corbyn would deal with this Ukraine-Russia scenario. Now, that's gone out, and he's clearly said it's a made-up scenario, but people will just forget that. Yeah. They'll just see the slander.
That's what Corbyn said.
And that's what Corbyn said, you know what I mean?
That's what Corbyn wants to do.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We don't know what he wants to do.
Yeah, like cancellation is. I think that's the more serious cancellation, is when, like, it's not even a media. It's not even like it's not a public frenzy. It's just a media target. You know, and I think the thing about Joe Rogan is, like, one of the reasons why he's safe is because he's not upsetting conservatives. He's not upsetting the conservative establishment. Because even though he's not a conservative himself, he
treads that line though.
He treads
it very well.
Very fine.
The thing is, like, he's had Ben Shapiro on his show, and he's had Bernie Sanders. Literally two extremists of like two different kinds of ethos. You know, and Ben Shapiro, like, when he's on Joe Rogan, is actually quite a cordial, nice guy, and his opinions aren't quite as serious and aren't quite as hard edged. You know, because but when he leaves that room and his persona is cartoon, he goes back to being cartoon. Yeah. Like, you know. And the thing is about Joe Rogan is, like, he's had both of those people on, and you could argue that's good balance. That's like good representation of two sides, but people focus because his fan base is so one side. They just think he's a big conservative guy.
Yeah. You're 100% right that he's got the balance of the extreme left and the extreme right. But the problem with that would be is, if you lean to one side, you're not going to check in or pay attention or fully digest what the opposite is.
Because we've all said as well, we watch the ones with the people that we want to see on. Like,
you got me. You got me.
That's it.
And that's because it's the only thing that was, that you're interested in.
Confirmation bias, isn't it? So that's what you're looking for.
It is. I think, like, look, the way I see things is, when it comes to, like, cancellation and sort of evolving, the best analogy I've seen so far is basically when someone said, compared it to speed limits. They basically said the speed limit back in the day was different. So everybody adhered to that speed limit. Years later, the speed limit changed. Some people are still trying to keep to that speed limit from back in the day, which is why they thought, there's issues. But if you can't judge people based on them adhering to the speed limit at the time. But everyone, thank you for checking in. Follow Bourbon Banter on Instagram, Facebook. It's on all streaming platforms, on YouTube as well, hence video. So I'll see you next time. Peace.